What's up, people? Welcome back to Motion Cap. We will be watching the recap of the movie. In time. Enjoy the video.
Hey, Mom.
You got in late last night?
I put in some overtime.
Where'd it go?
The movie begins with the ticking of a clock with a firm masculine voice that says, "I don't have time." The screen zooms out of a green clock meter embedded in a human hand. A young man in his late 20s, Salas, takes his hand and looks at the ticking clock which shows 24 hours left in it. He pulls the curtain off and looks out the window. He walks out and wishes her mother a happy 50th and dances with her. He heads out with a gift of 30 minutes from her mother, promising her to meet her at the bus stop the next day. Out there, it looks like a busy street. A little girl comes up to him and asks for some time. Unwilling at first, he takes her time transfer machine and lends her 5 minutes. Suddenly he realizes that the clock is ticking and he runs to work. Up ahead, on reaching a coffee spot, he reacts to the increasing prices of coffee every day. While he and his friend, Borel, rush on their way to the workplace, they spot a dead man on the street, with his clock meter down to 0. Then, the workers are seen forming a line to be paid for the day's job, and they're being paid in time. Will tries fighting for the actual amount he deserves, but couldn't argue much as he's already so low on time. After work, he goes to a local bar looking for Borel, where he takes an hour back from an acquaintance who owed him since his gambling days. A rich man there, with a century on his clock, is seen buying drinks for everyone. Will asks the rich man to be careful and get out of the place. He acknowledges his suggestion but doesn't nudge a little. The very next moment, Minutemen, the gangsters, arrive there and threaten the man. Will asks Borel to leave and he stays back to watch. When attacked by the gangsters, he rescues the rich man and takes him safely to an empty building. The rich man introduces himself as Henry Hamilton and tells him that he's 105 years old in real time and wishes to die. Henry explains to Will the theory behind the time zones that have been made in the first place so that the rich could make millions out of the dying poor. He offers help to Will but he refuses to take it. The next morning, Henry transfers his century to Will while he was asleep and departs from there. Will runs out to save Henry from dying but his clock runs out before Will could reach there. In another scene, Will's mother heads to catch the bus after paying off the loan, but she is crucially low on time to take a trip, so she gets off the bus and starts running. On the other end, when Will doesn't see her coming out of the bus, he runs in the opposite direction and tries to save her, but she gets timed out and dies in his arms. Then we see Raymond and his team of timekeepers, who find Henry's body and get suspicious. Will, in the meantime, changes his time zone and moves out of the city of Dayton to New Greenwich, where Miss Sylvia Weiss spots him running. The timekeepers catch hold of the CCTV footage and go after him. Will heads to the casino and meets Mr. Philippe Weiss over an interesting game of poker and defeats him. Mr. Weiss introduces Will to his daughter, Sylvia, who invites him to a party at their place. Will buys a drive and gets to the party. He spends time with Sylvia and finds her attractive, and she feels something similar. Raymond and his team, in the meanwhile, figure out his exact location and reach the party. They confiscate the stolen time from him and leave him with a little. Then, Will attacks the timekeepers and flees with Sylvia as his shield. After getting out of the timekeeper's sight, he hides under a bridge for the night. The next morning, while in the car, they are trapped by the Minutemen and Sylvia gets looted off her time while both of them are unconscious. Will gives some of his time to her and they head back to Dayton. The timekeepers locate their wrecked car and follow them there. Short on time, Will goes back to find Borel but learns from his wife that he had died because of drinking too much. Being too scarce on time, they pawn Sylvia's earrings in exchange for 2 days, 24 hours each. Will calls Mr. Weiss and asks for the timekeeper and tells him to make the transfer of 1,000 years to Timelines Happen, a place that gives out time for free to the needy. Sylvia is seen having a tough time adjusting to Dayton. So Will takes her to his place and gives her his mother's dress to change into. He explains to her his father's trick of how he could win a losing game very smartly. Sylvia tells him how it was when her clock started. He shares his own experience of it. The next morning, Will decides to let Sylvia go home and asks her to call for help while he covers to keep her safe. He also hands over a gun to her for an emergency. Sylvia goes over to make a call to her father but shoots impulsively when she sees Raymond heading towards Will. They run off in the timekeeper's car and further use it for their advantage. Meanwhile, the market fluctuates because of Sylvia's abduction and Mr. Weiss tries to calm people down. Raymond walks in just then and makes Weiss realize that Sylvia is now on Will's side. Weiss tries to bribe him, but all his efforts go in vain. Then we see that the interest rates on borrowing an amount of time from the bank keep on increasing every day. Will and Sylvia, in the meantime, break into a bank and rob it. After they're done, they ask the people to grab the required time they need. Will roams around distributing time to people who help others, but they need it. Raymond and other timekeepers find it confusing when they see unrecorded years floating around. Mr. Weiss regrets the fact that Sylvia is his daughter and understands how he had been suffocating her all time long. There, in the hotel room, Will and Sylvia realize that Raymond is outside with his team and try dodging them and running. Raymond goes after them a long way before he loses them on a bus. Trying to escape the timekeepers and keep their distance, they book an entire hotel. On that evening, Minutemen gather people who got time from the couple and ask them about the two. To assert their dominance, they wipe out the clock of a man who doesn't open his mouth. Seeing that, the other reveals the truth that he saw them checking into a hotel. Unaware of the situation outside, Will and Sylvia were together in the hotel room. Suddenly, the Minutemen attack them and challenge Will for a fight. He agrees to fight and applies his father's technique and takes the game till the end. Upon finding an opportunity, he kills all of them and wins over the Minutemen. Raymond discovers the bodies and expresses his loyalty towards his job to his subordinate, who favors Will a little for all the help he's been doing. While Will considers the situation an endgame, Sylvia tries to explain to him that there were still some other ways to go about it. Next, we see Mr. Weiss walking into a building with an increased number of guards. One of his guards spots Sylvia walking into the building and asks her to stay away. She expresses the will to surrender, but only to her father. And while she keeps everyone busy, Will reveals himself from in between the guards and abducts Mr. Weiss. He takes him to his own office and opens the safety vault. Inside, they find a time storage device with 1,000,000 years on it. The two then vanish out of the office with the device. Raymond notices a movement of 1,000,000 years off the clock in New Greenwich and follows them out. Will and Sylvia plan to get out of the New Greenwich and take the collected time to Dayton and distribute it amongst people to break the system. Raymond, on the other hand, drives around, determined to stop them from doing so. He spots them and goes after them. He gives away the orders to shoot them at sight even though it is not permitted in New Greenwich. The exit gate of the city is blocked and the two are shot at while they drive through the timekeepers. Breaking the barricading, both make their way out of the city. Raymond follows them with all he got. He takes a different route and comes from the side and bangs his car into theirs. Will and Sylvia still manage to get the device to the required people and ask them to get the time distributed. Then a huge crowd is gathered at the distribution place. Using the crowd to their rescue, Will and Sylvia run in the opposite direction while Raymond struggles his way amidst so many people to catch them. Meanwhile, the time gets distributed to people equally. With enough time on them, the two set off to reach Livingston on foot with Raymond looking for them in his car. He spots them running in speeds but is stopped by a roadblock. He starts running too and catches them up front. While they were still having a conversation, Raymond suddenly realizes that he hasn't topped up his time. By the time he does something about it, his clock goes out. Realizing a similar situation for the both of them, Will asks Sylvia to take his time and run to Livingston as she considers him better suited for the job. A few seconds after, Will realizes something and runs towards Raymond's car, and Sylvia follows him. He restores time in his clock from the car and catches to Sylvia to transfer some time. Luckily, Sylvia also survives. On the other hand, the entire system is seen crippling down as the existent gap between the rich and the poor starts disappearing. Mr. Weiss looks helpless as there's nothing he can do anymore. People start crossing time zones and living a life of equality. The authorities themselves stand confused with the situation going out of their hands. Various time zones, one after the other, start to go out of the hands of the timekeepers, so they also get succumbed to the situation. Then we see that the authorities are still looking for the duo who caused all this and have asked for the public's help in locating them. Will and Sylvia are sitting in a car as they watch the news about them going around. Will switches it off and they get their weapons ready for the next task at hand. They get off the car and head towards looting a bigger bank, a task they're good at. The end.